Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Adrienne Smith. I'm the president and CEO of the New Mexico Caregivers Coalition. We're a statewide organization formed here in New Mexico, and we do two things. We advocate for the direct care workforce, and number two, we conduct training for caregivers on any and all topics that are pertinent to them. So those might be hard skills in the direct care workforce field, like safe transfer and mobility, prevention of infection, medication awareness, all of these kinds of things that caregivers need to know every day. The other thing that we do is advocate for them, meaning caregivers, to be able to earn better wages, obtain fringe benefits, and get better education, actually, and professional development. So we have a unique presentation today. It's one of our caregiver shorts. And I'm so happy to have with us today Georgia Heathcock, who is an intern from New Mexico, University of New Mexico. And she's going to talk to us today on a skill that every staff person of the Caregivers Coalition ought to have, but also that could be very helpful to caregivers who are seeking to rise up the ladder in the workplace. Because I suspect that the more you rise up the ladder, if you're a caregiver, the more that you'll probably be moved to a desk, to be able to have these other Excel skills and all these other skills that you need. So, Georgia, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and who you are, and then take it away for the presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi, I'm Georgia Heathcock. I am an intern here at the New Mexico Caregivers Coalition, and today I want to talk about pivot tables in Excel. So, a little bit about me. I have a bachelor's of science in population health at the University of New Mexico. I spent my first 2 years at the University of California, San Diego. I like to include that little tidbit just because of the difference in academic scheduling, being a quarter system versus semester, and also the amount of data that I had to deal with at UC San Diego, with it being such a research heavy university. I am a student athlete here at the University of Mexico on the softball team. I started my college career fall of 2022, and I'm finishing it up here May of 2026. I am an intern at the Mexico Caregivers Coalition. This is the spring of 2026 semester that I was an intern, and I'm also a softball coach, where shockingly Excel comes in incredibly handy, especially with keeping up with, say, college coaches looking at my athletes. So, a little bit of our agenda. I want to get into what a pivot table is, when to use a pivot table, how to create a pivot table, of course, that's why we're all here. And then I want to give a real world example utilizing 2021 New Mexico Youth Risk and Resiliency Survey data. So, we'll be nice, short, and simple. Let's get right into it. What is a pivot table? Microsoft defines a pivot table as a powerful tool to calculate, summarize, and analyze data that lets you see comparisons, patterns, and trends in your data. And when is best to even use a pivot table? There's a laundry list of times that you may find that a pivot table is useful. But the best times that I've found in my limited experience is when you're dealing with extremely large data sets. Or just even 100 rows of data. Nobody wants to actually go through and count 100 rows of data and sort through all of that. With a pivot table, you don't have to. It's best to use when you need to get counts on variables. You need to compare the different variables that you do have. And something that I used a lot in this internship was needing to deliver package numbers at the end of every month. But really, the list goes on. Pivot tables can be extremely useful in all sorts of work, and playing around with it to figure out what works best and when you find it most useful can really help you in your work. And then, of course, what we're all here for, how to create a pivot table. So, to create a pivot table, you want to, of course, open your data in Excel. You are going to select any cell within that existing data. So it can be, say, that in this slide, it says A1 through DY 993. I could select any cell in that data and it will generate the pivot table for me. So I will select a cell. You then go to the Insert tab in the top ribbon of your Excel, and you will select the Pivot Table button. From there, that's what this image on the slide is showing. You will export to a new worksheet. You can have it go to an existing worksheet. I found that just creating a new worksheet so that you can preserve all your other data um, was the best move in my case, and likely for many others working as well. From there, you're going to choose your different variables to count, compare, etc. You'll see that in the little scroll button of your variables that it will have, and you'll apply them into the appropriate bucket. So there's these four buckets: filters, columns, rows, and values. Values will provide a count on your variable, whether that's just a numeric one, a percentage of a grand total, and then columns and rows will be what places your variables in like table format. So in this example, I used height in inches, and I made it a row, like a row shape. And then I wanted to count the number of respondents that reported each height in inches. And so that is what you will see in the table on the slide is, for example, there were 9 respondents who reported being 58 inches in height. And so it's really useful when, of course, dealing with 992 responses. If I just need to know how many of them are 62 inches in height, again, this is a random example, but if I need to know that, I don't want to scroll through 992 rows to figure that out. If I can have a pivot table and in 5 seconds realized that 55 respondents reported being 62 inches in height. So, and then I want to just give a real world example using the steps that I just gave and using the 2021 New Mexico Youth Risk and Resiliency data. And I will go over to this Excel sheet. Adrian, can you see the Excel sheet?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Okay, so as you can see, really big Excel sheet, lots of numbers, lots of variables, it goes on. I'm going to select, let's say, I-10. And it doesn't matter what the variable is because it will give you all of the variables. So I'm selecting I-10. I'm going to go over to my Insert tab in the ribbon. I'm going to select Pivot Table. And again, here's where you see that you can select the range. I want the full data populated. And then choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. I want it in a new worksheet, and it will auto select that for you. So if you want it in an existing worksheet, you will have to select that. But in my case, I never want to use that. And then here you go. Here is the report. Here's the scroll of all of my variables. And then, of course, here is my 4 buckets. So I want to count, let's say, the weight in pounds. I want to click and drag the variable to rows, and it will give me all of the weights in pounds that were reported. Long, long list of them. And then I'm going to take the weight in pounds again, click and drag it over to values, and it gives me a count of the weight in pounds of all of the respondents and how many weights were responded each time. One interesting thing about these values is you can change the value field settings depending on what you're doing. If you want to summarize the values by a different number, this is typically good whenever you're comparing multiple variables, and that's also where columns will typically come in handy. And you can also show values as. So let's say I want to know like the percentage of each weight for respondents. I would go to percentage of grand total. So percent of all of the respondents, and I get all of these. So out of the 992 respondents, let's say 1.92% of them reported at 165 pounds. Again, an obscure example, but it can come in handy, especially if you're needing this data. Oopsies. If you're needing this data. Um, and again, you can compare different variables in here. In my work, I needed counts a lot, so I needed to package up numbers. And so for me, it was really useful just to get like the different counts from hundreds of rows of data. I just need a count of, say, how many reported in each county. It was really easy for me to just populate that data. One thing I do want to mention is if you are creating a pivot table and you add more data to the bottom, you will have to click again and create a new pivot table, and that will have your updated data. It will not automatically register that you added new data, but again, it takes 2 seconds to select, insert, and then it will update all of your data then. And I believe that is all I have on pivot tables. Thank you.
That is wonderful. Real world example, what Georgia's doing for us here at the coalition is she has got counts on all people from, say, a particular county that we are funding for the lifespan respite care voucher. From that, and just given that she can look at how many people are from, how many applicants are from each county in New Mexico. Based on that, I can go in and actually do a pivot table based on the reason why each caregiver is needing the respite care voucher. We can go look at the kind of diagnosis that every care recipient has. We can do a count of the diagnoses of the care recipients. We can even do a count of every zip code for every application that comes in versus a count for every zip code of application that we fund. So, well, I can't tell you how useful this is, Georgia. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.